When we imagine the British royal family in centuries past, our minds tend to drift toward grandeur. Towering castles, glittering jewels, and portraits that radiate power and poise. But beneath the surface of regal splendor lay a reality that was far less refined. Hygiene, as we understand it today, was not just neglected, it was misunderstood, feared, and often actively avoided. The royal courts of Tudor and Georgian England were steeped in ceremony, yes, but also in grime, superstition, and a surprising tolerance for filth. Let's begin with Queen Elizabeth I, a monarch whose legacy is defined by intellect, political mastery, and a striking visual identity. Her pale face, fiery red hair, and elaborate gowns became symbols of her reign. But behind the image was a woman who, by most accounts, bathed only once a month. At the time, water was considered dangerous. Physicians warned that bathing could weaken the body, open the pores, and invite illness. The solution? Scent. Elizabeth relied heavily on perfumes and aromatic oils, layering them over skin that rarely saw soap. She carried pomanders, small ornate balls filled with cloves, lavender, and other herbs, not as fashion statements, but as shields against the ever-present stench of court life. Her clothing, though stunning, was rarely cleaned. Gowns were made of heavy brocade and velvet, often embroidered with gold thread and pearls. Washing such garments was risky. The fabrics could shrink, fade, or unravel. Instead, linen undergarments were worn beneath the outer layers and changed more frequently, though even those weren't washed daily. Over time, the buildup of sweat, oils, and perfume created a kind of wearable ecosystem, one that clung to the body and lingered in the air. Elizabeth's signature pale complexion came at a steep cost. Her makeup was made from a mixture of white lead and vinegar, a toxic blend that corroded the skin over time. As sores and blemishes developed, they were covered with more makeup, creating a cycle of damage and concealment. The pursuit of beauty was relentless, even when it came at the expense of health. But personal hygiene was only part of the story. The palaces themselves, Hampton Court, Whitehall, and others, were architectural marvels, yet they lacked the most basic sanitation. Chamber pots were tucked into corners of grand rooms, and waste was often dumped into cesspits or directly into the Thames. The river, a source of water and transport, doubled as a sewer. The smell was omnipresent, seeping through tapestries and stone walls. Henry VIII's court moved frequently, not for diplomacy or leisure, but to escape the overwhelming stench that built up over time. Vermin thrived in these conditions. Rats darted through kitchens and corridors, fleas nested in bedding, and lice were so common they were barely remarked upon. Even the most luxurious chambers couldn't keep them out. Charles II, known for his charm and indulgence, kept dogs in his bedchamber. These weren't pampered pets, they were flea-ridden companions in a room already teeming with life that had no business being there. Dental hygiene was another blind spot. As sugar became more accessible in the 17th century, it quickly became a symbol of status. Royals consumed it in excess, indulging in sweetmeats, candied fruits, and elaborate desserts. The result was widespread tooth decay. Elizabeth I's blackened teeth weren't just the result of neglect, they were a badge of wealth. Some courtiers even darkened their own teeth to mimic her appearance. Toothbrushes existed, but they were rare and not widely used. Dental care was crude, often limited to extractions performed without anesthesia. Pain was part of the process, and bad breath was simply part of court life. Fashion didn't help. Wigs, popular in the 17th and 18th centuries, were worn to cover hair loss and lice. They were made from human or animal hair, powdered with starch or scented dust, and rarely cleaned. Beneath the surface, they were breeding grounds for parasites. Some were so elaborate they caused headaches and neck strain, yet they remained essential to the image of nobility. The powder itself, often made from flour or crushed minerals, clung to the scalp and mingled with sweat, creating a paste that was anything but pleasant. Despite these conditions, the monarchy maintained a carefully crafted public image. Portraits were designed to project perfection. Artists were instructed to omit blemishes, signs of illness, and any indication of poor hygiene. The monarchy wasn't just a political institution, it was a visual one. Cleanliness, grace, and divine authority were painted into existence, even as the reality behind the canvas told a different story. These practices weren't exclusive to royalty. They reflected the broader beliefs of the time. The fear of water, the reliance on scent, the use of toxic cosmetics, these were cultural norms. What set the monarchy apart was the scale of the illusion. While commoners lived in squalor, royals were expected to embody purity and power. The disconnect between appearance and reality was vast, and it was maintained through ritual, art, and silence. Even the daily routines of court life reinforced the illusion. Ceremonial dress, rarely cleaned, was worn to project dignity. Public appearances were choreographed to avoid exposure to unpleasant truths. Servants worked tirelessly to maintain the facade, often at great personal cost. It doesn't diminish their legacy, it adds dimension. These were people navigating a world without modern medicine, plumbing, or scientific consensus. Their choices, strange as they seem now, were shaped by fear, tradition, and the pursuit of status. They lived in a world where appearance mattered more than reality, and where the illusion of cleanliness was more powerful than the act itself. So the next time you see a royal portrait or watch a coronation, remember what's missing from the frame. The grime, the rot, the rituals of masking what couldn't be cleaned away. The crown may have sparkled, but the world beneath it was far more human, flawed, fascinating, and deeply shaped by the beliefs of its time. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the less than glamorous side of royal history, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with your friends. There's plenty more where this came from. Stories that peel back the layers of legend to reveal the strange, gritty, and fascinating truths underneath. Leave a comment with the detail that surprised you most, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.